Hi, this is Dr. P, and I'm going to undertake a thankless task, and that is to suggest what's in the future for role-playing games. Now, there are lots of caveats here. I'm not a futurist. I don't claim to be. At age 70, I do have a lot of experience with RPGs, so from since before Dungeons and Dragons, really, and I have lots of experience with the game industry as a whole, but I have no crystal ball. I'm just going to try to extrapolate from current trends. Keep in mind that what happens in video games often comes to tabletop games thereafter. I'm going to try to talk about both, but I always keep tabletop games uppermost in my mind. Moreover, computer RPGs and MMOs are very different from tabletop RPGs. And I've not stayed on top of MMOs in the last few years, and I've never played a tabletop RPG online. So here's a list of trends. I'll go over each one separately. The first is reward versus consequence. In opposed games, you have to work to succeed. You have to earn what you get. This is the way old traditional games were played, and serious hobby games like chess, checkers, Go, diplomacy, and lots of others. In party games, generally, you enjoy them because you're participating. Most players don't worry about who wins, and many family games are similar. You enjoy the activity and not the winning. Today, led by video games, in RPGs, you're rewarded for participation. You don't need to earn anything. This is especially characteristic of free-to-play games, of course. This attitude has become prevalent among hobby game players and continues to get stronger. You could say that most of the players who've been flooding into hobby gaming have been people who are not highly competitive, who are not playing to earn something. Many board games have become parallel competitions, where each player does his or her own thing and doesn't worry much, if at all, about the other players. In RPGs, this amounts to games with virtually no danger of character death. Some people say it's playing make-believe instead of playing a game, and that's a good statement to make. So we can talk about storytelling versus games, playing games. Every game has a narrative, which is an account of what happens. This interests the participants, but often won't interest most non-participants. Heck, me going to the grocery store and coming back has a narrative, and it might interest my wife, but it's not going to interest anybody else. Storytelling, though, requires the author to control what happens. In opposed games, then the players try to control what happens, but certainly the designer doesn't. So opposed games and storytelling are opposites. The one is chaotic, needing control by the players, and the other requires control by the GM, who is a storyteller. Now, early RPGs were played by wargamers and were cooperative games. Now storytelling predominates, and this will continue as opposed gamers are becoming a smaller portion of RPG players in particular, and of gamers in general. Video games have already lost the possibility of failure in the long run, and are playgrounds where the designers are telling stories or providing experiences, quote unquote. Now keep in mind, electronic RPGs, whether you're talking about computers, consoles, smartphones, are much bigger business than tabletop. Tabletop-toppers make a lot of noise, but in terms of dollars, there's a vast difference. Skyrim, which was issued in 2011, alone sold well over $1 billion in its first few years, far more than the entire tabletop RPG business for the past decade. RPGs for smartphones alone enormously outsell tabletop RPGs. Now, what about online video game play? How many people were already playing MMOs, massively multiplayer online games like World of Warcraft, before the pandemic. Many video games are now aimed at multiplayer online play, partly because of the pandemic. As often happens, we see first in video games the trends that later affect tabletop games. How about online tabletop play? Well, this is something that was greatly encouraged by the pandemic, though it was growing as it was. Consider also Wizards of the Coast said some years ago that half the people coming into D&D play first saw it online, for example through Twitch, rather than live. People are now accustomed to meeting via Zoom and other online methods. Software to facilitate online tabletop RPG play is common. You lose some aspects of playing games with your friends when you play tabletops online, but that doesn't seem to put many off, and there are conveniences in playing from your own home. Computer Assist for tabletop play. This has been around for a long time. Long ago, I wrote a program in BASIC running on my Radio Shack notebook computer, and a notebook computer, it was a little puddly thing, to help calculate XP, experience points, my way. And another program on a Kpro CPM system, CPM preceding MS-DOS, to make the party sheet, storing characters on disk. But that was unusual back when. I've already mentioned the software for GMing online, and there's lots of other assists for software from spreadsheets to something more elaborate. I recall recently watching people play face-to-face without character sheets because the character sheets were on their smartphones. And of course, dice rolling programs for smartphones are common. So we're moving gradually in the direction of computers being involved even in tabletop games. And we're moving away from RPGs as something where you have to earn what you get to something where you're rewarded for participation. Always keep in mind, some big changes in life, such as smartphones, were hardly foreseen by anyone. The same thing may happen for RPGs. Thanks for listening.